Today I wanted to get to the number 22, which has a great deal of interest for me personally. As a student of the Hebrew alphabet, the Hebrew language, there are 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. They act as letters. They also act as numbers.
That's exactly right. So that's a clue right there that God is saying, pay attention to 22. 22 is especially a number for the Jews. And it's a number of end times. Not only are there 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet, but the time of Jacob's trouble was actually, did you know, 22 years. He suffered for 22 years. Then the time of Joseph's trouble was also 22 years, counting from the time that he was thrown down the well to the time when the brothers finally came, 2 years into the famine, and they bowed down to him without recognizing him at first. So 22 keeps appearing. Did you realize even when Israel became a nation in 1948, even that 1948 can be calculated as a 22. It's 1 plus 9 plus 4 plus 8, 22. So that's reduced. It's called reduced gematria. So
yeah,
everywhere you can see 22.
I had not thought of that at all. 1 plus 9 plus 4 plus 8, 22. Okay, you've got me going now.
And then you've got the book of Revelation. How many chapters are there?
22.
So it's the number of the Jews. It's the number of end times. That alone gives you a macro clue that the book of Revelation is written primarily to the Jews. That's why it's a mystery to many Gentile Christians, because it has to do with end time. It has to do with the tribulation. Now, I found something interesting that you might like, especially for the American audiences. The Russian collusion investigation lasted 22 months. Isn't that amazing? 22 months. So, and Mueller delivered his report to the Attorney General Barr on the 22nd of March. So there it is again, 22.
Some people would say, oh, coincidence.
And it may be. Maybe it's a coincidence. But how many coincidences do you need to get your attention?
In fact, God gets our attention through the number that appears at the oddest possible moment. A number of people have seen, for example, the number 1111. I've had people email me and say, I keep seeing the number 1111 on a clock. Every time I look at a clock, it happens to be on 1111. And it's amazing how often we see that. Is that just coincidence, or is that somebody trying to tell us something, or what should we believe?
Well, from the Bible, 11 is the number of chaos. It's 12 minus 1. 12 is order. You take 1 away from order, you have disorder and chaos. And this is why you have September 11. It's the number of chaos. So a lot of things happen on the 11th or 11th day or 11th month that is chaotic. So it might be God getting their attention. Depends on that person. It's like a dream. You cannot just do a generalization for everybody. But the number 11 itself is speaking of chaos.
Like a warning. I mean,
it's a warning.
Given the state of today's civilization, 1111 seems perfectly appropriate.
Sure does.
let's kind of conclude with a look into the future. Everybody is looking for the return of the Lord.
Well, we'd have to go to Bible prophecy first and understand the plain words of the Bible, right? So we're understanding the Bible at different levels. We first have to accept the plain level, and then we can look at some of the numerical values. The most important prophecy in the entire Bible about the coming of the Lord is Daniel chapter 9. And it's a bit complicated because we don't think of weeks in terms of years, but Daniel prophesied that there will be 70 weeks of years, or 490 years, for God to deal with the Jews. And that actually came because he was expecting everything to end at the end of the Babylonian captivity. Right? At 70 years was up, he was praying. He said, Lord, get us out of this oppressive regime and take us back to the promised land. Then it'll be all over. And God says, no, there's sort of a delay. It's 490 years more until the Messiah, but then he divides it up into 7, and then 62, and then 1. So we see that these weeks get divided. So there's a 69-week period, which is 483 years. If we count 483 biblical years, which is 360 days, from the trigger of what Daniel said, which is the decree to rebuild Jerusalem, and that happened in 445 BC with Artaxerxes' decree, then we go straight to the 10th of Nisan, 32 AD. That gives us a mathematically precise prediction when the Messiah would come. So if any Jew would study Daniel chapter 9, you would know you only get 483 years before your Messiah must appear. Now there's another period of 7 left when he can come back and fulfill the last. And this is the thing that's interesting to me, is the way that Daniel divided it. Sir Isaac Newton said that it was divided because it also points to the second coming. Now this is the question, is we don't want to set dates, but maybe we can know the season. Maybe we can know roughly the area that we're in. And I think it's very exciting because if we can find another decree to rebuild Jerusalem, we could do the same calculation, which was authorized by God the first time, and see, can we get into the zone of when the second coming is? And a lot of signs are converging that we're very near. I think in these 2020 season, we've got a lot of things converging. And so I think we should live, fervently for Christ, tell as many people about Jesus as possible. But the question is there or was there another decree to rebuild Jerusalem? Because at 70 AD, they get dispersed, the Jews, and there's a diaspora, so the nation of Israel ceased to exist. Was there another decree? And sure enough, if you look in history, the Sultan Suleiman made a decree to rebuild Jerusalem in 1537 AD. That means we can now go back to the math that God gave Daniel and add 483 years to 1537, and we would come to exactly 2020. That's next year.
Wow.